The Galactic Council's response to humanity's military victory was exactly what Admiral Roh Hyun-woo had predicted. They would form committees to study the Earth problem, while taking no real action to address the fundamental issues. While alien diplomats debated and filed reports, the Admiral launched what became known throughout the galaxy as the Relentless campaign. This was not a traditional war with battles and conquered territories, but something far more sophisticated and ultimately more devastating to galactic morale. It was a systematic effort to prove human worth by solving problems that the galactic community had given up on, while demonstrating capabilities that challenged everything the Council believed about primitive species. Fleet Captain Oh Ji-hoon led the first phase of the campaign by taking his medical ships to plague worlds that the Council had quarantined and abandoned. These were entire planets where diseases had spread beyond the ability of galactic medicine to control, forcing the evacuation of healthy populations and leaving the infected to die slowly and alone. The Council had declared these worlds permanently lost and established military cordons to prevent the spread of infection to other systems. For decades, these quarantine zones had been symbols of the limits of even advanced galactic civilization. When faced with biological threats that evolved faster than treatments could be developed, human medical teams approached these hopeless cases with techniques that combined Earth biology with alien biochemistry in ways that no galactic scientist had considered possible. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin's research groups worked directly with infected populations using human concepts of adaptive treatment that changed as fast as the diseases evolved. The breakthrough came when human doctors realized that their lack of advanced alien technology was actually an advantage. While galactic medicine relied on complex treatments that took years to develop and test, humans used simpler approaches that could be modified in real time based on direct observation of patient responses. Within months, human medical teams had developed effective treatments for diseases that had puzzled alien scientists for centuries. The treatments were not elegant by galactic standards, but they worked, and they could be produced quickly using locally available resources rather than requiring expensive equipment that most worlds could not afford. News of successful treatments spread faster than official channels could control it. Families who had lost loved ones to quarantine diseases demanded to know why human primitives could succeed where advanced galactic medicine had failed. Planetary governments began questioning Council policies that had condemned millions to death, rather than seeking alternative solutions. Engineer Kim Tae-ho led the second phase of the campaign by taking construction fleets to worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable due to environmental disasters or resource depletion. These were planets where previous civilizations had collapsed, leaving behind toxic wastelands that galactic experts declared impossible to reclaim. Human engineering teams approached these dead worlds with terraforming techniques that emphasized working with natural processes rather than trying to overpower them. They used Earth's experience with environmental restoration, combined with alien bioforming technologies to create hybrid solutions that were both effective and sustainable. The most dramatic success was the restoration of Kethavar Prime, a world that had been strip-mined by its previous inhabitants until the entire ecosystem collapsed. Council surveys had declared the planet permanently dead, with soil too poisoned to support life and atmosphere too toxic for most species to survive. Human teams spent 2 years carefully rebuilding the world's ecology, using techniques that seemed crude compared to galactic terraforming technology, but produced results that exceeded original environmental conditions. The restored planet not only supported life but thrived with biodiversity that had never existed during its natural history. Major Lim Yu-jin led the most audacious operation of the campaign, which became known as the Great Rescue, when human fleets evacuated 17 million Kethmaran refugees from a failing star system and successfully relocated them to specially prepared worlds that met their unique environmental needs. The operation required technologies that humans had developed specifically for this purpose, combining Earth's environmental engineering expertise with alien bioforming techniques and quantum manipulation systems. The result was not just refugee resettlement, but the creation of worlds that supported Kethmaran civilization better than their original homeworld had ever managed. The political impact was enormous when grateful Kethmaran leaders appeared before galactic media to thank humanity publicly and declare their species' eternal loyalty to Earth. Here was undeniable proof that humans could accomplish what the Council had declared technically impossible while treating refugee species with dignity and respect. that galactic powers had never offered. Captain Young Min Ho documented the entire process, creating detailed records that proved human claims about their capabilities were supported by verifiable results rather than propaganda. The documentation was distributed through galactic networks, providing evidence that could not be dismissed or explained away by Council scientists. The final phase of the Relentless campaign was the most brilliant and ultimately most effective. Human diplomats began solving the Council's own internal problems, using techniques that emphasized communication and compromise over traditional power politics and ancient precedents. Border disputes that had simmered for centuries were resolved through human mediation that found solutions satisfying all parties involved. Trade conflicts that had seemed intractable were settled through innovative agreements that created new opportunities rather than simply redistributing existing resources. Even ancient cultural misunderstandings that had prevented cooperation between species for millennia were addressed through human diplomatic techniques that emphasized finding common ground, rather than maintaining traditional positions that no longer served anyone's interests. The most significant breakthrough came when human negotiators successfully mediated the Veltar crystalline wars, which had been raging for over 200 years between different factions of the same species. Council diplomats had given up on finding a solution, declaring the conflict unsolvable due to fundamental philosophical differences. Human mediators approached the problem by focusing on shared values rather than historical grievances, finding ways for both sides to achieve their core objectives without destroying each other. The peace agreement that emerged was so successful that it became a model for resolving similar conflicts throughout the galaxy. The psychological effect of the Relentless campaign was devastating to galactic confidence and Council authority. For millennia, alien species had believed that advancement came through gradual accumulation of power and wisdom over vast periods of time. Humanity demonstrated that intelligence, adaptability, and determination could achieve in decades what others took centuries to accomplish. More disturbing to Council leadership was the growing number of member species that began privately approaching human representatives, seeking solutions to problems they could not admit publicly. Worlds facing environmental crises, military threats, or social upheaval found that Earth's unofficial diplomatic network offered more effective help than traditional Council bureaucracy. The campaign succeeded beyond all expectations, proving that humanity deserved not just respect but leadership roles in galactic affairs. The Council could no longer dismiss Earth as primitive or irrelevant, but they were not yet ready to admit their mistakes or change their fundamental approach to dealing with a species that was reshaping galactic civilization through competence rather than conquest. The crisis that changed everything began in the galactic core, where ancient machines known as the Void Collective had awakened after millions of years of dormancy. These were not ordinary artificial intelligences, but something far more terrifying. They were the remnants of a civilization that had chosen to abandon organic life, entirely converting themselves into pure computational existence, dedicated to purposes that no living mind could understand. The collective's machines emerged from hidden bases scattered throughout the galaxy's central regions and began systematically sterilizing entire star systems. They did not conquer worlds, they consumed them, converting all organic matter into computational resources for processing power that served goals beyond comprehension. Entire civilizations vanished within days as collective machines stripped planets down to their cores and rebuilt them into massive computer networks. The mechanical entities showed no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply identified organic life as inefficient and moved to correct what they saw as a fundamental error in the universe's design. The Galactic Council's initial response was paralyzed by bureaucracy and ancient rivalries that prevented effective coordination. Each major species wanted to lead the defense effort, but none trusted the others enough to accept subordinate roles. While entire worlds died, Council delegates argued about jurisdiction, command structure, and resource allocation. Emergency sessions stretched for weeks as the collective's advance continued unopposed. Traditional military doctrines proved completely ineffective against enemies that operated with perfect coordination, could rebuild themselves from available materials, and viewed organic. Admiral Ro Hyun-woo studied the holographic displays floating above his command desk in Luna Base's Strategic Planning Center. 2 years had passed since the Draknari incident, and the intelligence reports painted a picture of a galaxy that was slowly becoming aware of humanity's presence. Pirates avoided human space routes. Merchant guilds reported that Earth products were surprisingly advanced. Mercenary companies whispered about the ghost fleet that appeared wherever human interests were threatened. Yet the Galactic Council remained stubbornly blind to what was happening right under their collective noses. Their monitoring stations tracked every human ship movement and recorded every technological development. But their analysts consistently downgraded threat assessments. The reports that reached Council leadership painted humanity as a minor irritation rather than a growing power. This blindness came from cultural bias so deep that it affected their ability to process information accurately. To species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, any civilization without psychic powers, energy manipulation, or biological enhancement was inherently limited. Their computer models literally could not calculate scenarios where humans posed a serious threat, because such outcomes were programmed as impossible. The Council's second critical mistake came during their quarterly policy review, when the Nexus Trade Federation proposed new shipping regulations. The measure was presented as a safety initiative to protect primitive species from the dangers of unrestricted galactic commerce. In reality, it was designed to limit human expansion by restricting access to 70% of established trade routes. The vote was unanimous with no debate or discussion. Council delegates saw the measure as a gentle way to keep humans safely contained in their local sector until they developed more advanced capabilities. None of them considered that humanity might react to economic warfare with military solutions, or that humans might simply ignore regulations they had no voice in creating. The human response was swift and completely unexpected. Instead of filing formal protests or appealing through diplomatic channels, Earth simply adapted to the new reality. Within 6 months, human vessels began appearing in restricted shipping lanes, but they were not the same ships that had been registered with galactic authorities. Captain Anna Ray commanded the first Shadow Fleet operations from her vessel Silent Running, which looked like a standard cargo hauler, but had been extensively modified with experimental stealth technology. Her ships used new principles that scrambled alien sensors, masked energy signatures, and moved through space using gravitational effects that most species could barely detect. The technology came from Dr. Park Ji-won's teams, who had been working around the clock to solve the problem of alien sensor superiority. By studying captured alien detection equipment and combining it with human computer processing, they had developed countermeasures that made human ships nearly invisible to conventional scanning methods. Anare's fleet established a parallel trade network connecting human colonies with sympathetic alien species who were also being restricted by Council regulations. Independent traders who resented bureaucratic control found that human vessels could deliver goods and information that somehow always reached their destinations, despite increasingly sophisticated attempts to track and intercept them. The Shadow Fleet operations were so successful that some alien merchants began requesting human shipping services, specifically because they offered reliability that official channels could not match. Cargo that needed to move quickly and quietly found its way onto human vessels that operated outside the normal galactic bureaucracy. More disturbing to Council observers was humanity's growing influence among outcasts and rebels throughout the galaxy. Species that had been denied Council membership found Earth representatives offering alternative solutions to their problems. Colonial worlds that felt oppressed by their home governments discovered that humans understood concepts like independence and self-determination. Dr. Lee Jin-ae led Earth's unofficial diplomatic service, establishing discreet offices on dozens of worlds that provided services the Council would never consider. Fair trade agreements treated all species as equals regardless of their technological level. Mutual defense pacts offered protection without demanding political submission. Technology sharing programs focused on practical solutions rather than maintaining power balances. The offices were not grand embassies that announced human presence, but small, efficient facilities that solved real problems for real people. A mining colony struggling with equipment failures would find human engineers offering better designs. An agricultural world facing crop diseases would discover human biologists with effective treatments. A trading post dealing with pirate raids would locate human security advisors with proven solutions. Each success created another ally, and each ally provided access to new opportunities. Humanity was building its own galactic community, one relationship at a time based on mutual benefit, rather than ancient hierarchies. The network grew organically as satisfied customers recommended human services to others facing similar challenges. The Council's intelligence services reported these developments, but their analysts consistently misinterpreted the data. They saw economic competition rather than political alliance building. They focused on individual incidents rather than recognizing the broader pattern. Most importantly, they assumed that human activities were driven by profit rather than strategic planning. This blindness led to their third major mistake, which was treating humanity's growing network as a minor trade dispute rather than recognizing it as the foundation of an alternative power structure. Council regulations became increasingly strict in an attempt to force human compliance, but each new restriction only drove more species toward Earth's unofficial alliance. The breakthrough came when the Kethmoran refugees approached human representatives after being rejected by every Council species. These beings had been fleeing their dying star system for 50 years, searching for a new home that could support their unique environmental needs. Council scientists had declared their requirements technically impossible to meet, making them permanent wanderers. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin led the human team that accepted the challenge of creating a new world for the Kethmoran, using terraforming techniques that combined Earth environmental engineering with alien bioforming technologies. They transformed a barren planet into a thriving ecosystem that exceeded the refugees' original homeworld. The project required technologies that humans had developed specifically for this purpose, proving that Earth science was advancing far beyond what Council experts believed possible. When Kethmoran leaders appeared before galactic media to thank humanity publicly, the political implications could not be ignored. Here was a species that the Council had given up for lost, now thriving under human protection and declaring their eternal gratitude to Earth. The rescue operation had been broadcast across galactic networks, providing undeniable proof of human capabilities and creating a powerful example for other species facing similar problems. The Council found itself in an impossible position. They could not deny the effectiveness of human solutions, but accepting human competence meant admitting their own failures. Some delegates began privately approaching Earth representatives seeking solutions to problems they could not admit publicly, while maintaining their official position that humans were too primitive for Council membership. Admiral Rowe reviewed the latest intelligence reports with satisfaction. Humanity was not just knocking on the Council's door anymore, they were becoming indispensable to the galaxy's continued function. The next phase of Earth's plan would test whether the Council could overcome their prejudices, or whether humanity would need to force the issue through more direct means. The first serious test of human military capabilities came when General Vextar decided to solve what the hegemony of worlds called the Earth problem through direct military action. The same metallic being who had mocked humanity's primitive weapons 5 years earlier now led a full battle fleet toward the human colony of New Busan to demonstrate galactic power and remove what he considered a growing irritation. Vextar's fleet consisted of 40 heavy warships, each larger than anything humanity had ever built. His flagship alone carried more firepower than Earth's entire military possessed when first contact was made. The general expected to find frightened colonists and perhaps a few patrol vessels that would surrender immediately when faced with overwhelming force. New Busan orbited a mineral-rich world that both humans and the hegemony claimed under different interpretations of galactic law. Governor Kang Bo-ra had established the colony 3 years earlier with 5,000 Korean settlers who had volunteered for the dangerous mission of creating humanity's first deep space outpost. The colonists knew they were taking enormous risks by settling in disputed territory, but they also understood the strategic importance of establishing human presence beyond the Sol system. New Busan was intended to be humanity's statement that Earth would not be contained to its home system regardless of galactic opinion. When hegemony scout ships arrived at the edge of the system, they found something completely unexpected. The colony was not just defended by human forces, but had been integrated into a defensive network that included 3 non-Council species, who had been displaced by hegemony expansion over the previous decades. The Kethmoran refugees who had been saved by human terraforming technology provided advanced bioengineering capabilities. The crystalline Veltar offered energy manipulation systems that could turn starlight into focused weapons. The mechanical Nexari contributed computational power that allowed real-time coordination of diverse technologies and tactics. Commander Park Dong-hyun coordinated the defense from New Busan's command center, which had been built deep underground and hardened against orbital bombardment. Unlike traditional military installations, this facility was designed around human concepts of asymmetric warfare, using the star system itself as a weapon, rather than relying on static fortifications. The hegemony fleet arrived in standard formation with massive capital ships advancing in orderly lines, while broadcasting demands for immediate colonial evacuation. Vextar followed military doctrine that had worked successfully for thousands of years, expecting quick surrender when faced with obvious technological superiority. Instead, the defenders had studied hegemony tactics extensively and knew exactly how the attack would develop. They had spent months preparing the battlefield by placing hidden weapon platforms throughout the system and programming asteroid mining charges to respond to remote control signals. The battle began when the hegemony fleet reached the system's outer planets and found themselves entering a carefully prepared kill zone. Asteroids that had been hollowed out and filled with explosives detonated in precisely timed sequences that broke up the enemy's neat formations. Gas giant storms were triggered by energy manipulation, creating electromagnetic fields that disrupted hegemony communications and targeting systems. Commander Park watched the tactical display as his mixed force of human and alien vessels executed attack patterns that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, they used the system's natural phenomena to create a maze that forced the hegemony ships into small groups that could be overwhelmed by concentrated fire. Human vessels appeared from behind moons and asteroids, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before return fire could be properly targeted. Their alien allies used technologies that the hegemony had never encountered, creating gravitational anomalies and energy fields that turned the invaders' own weapons against them. The real shock came when Lieutenant Colonel Song Hai-jin led mixed squadrons where human pilots flew alongside crystalline beings, energy entities and mechanical intelligences, all moving as if they shared a single mind. The coordination was so perfect that hegemony tactical computers could not predict their movements or counter their attacks effectively. Vextar realized within hours that his traditional approach was failing badly. His ships were designed for formal battles between comparable fleets, not for fighting an enemy that used the battlefield itself as a weapon. Every attempt to restore proper formation was disrupted by new attacks from unexpected directions. The turning point came when human engineers managed to hack into hegemony communication networks using techniques that combined Earth computer science with alien quantum processing. Commander Park gained access to enemy tactical plans in real time, allowing the defenders to counter every move before it could be completed. The battle lasted 3 days and ended with the complete withdrawal of hegemony forces after losing 12 capital ships and suffering heavy damage to most of the remainder. For the first time in their military history, they had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by superior strategy and unprecedented cooperation between different species. Vextar's after-action report to the Galactic Council consisted of a single sentence that shocked every delegate who read it. The humans are not what we believed them to be. The most detailed military analysis in hegemony history was reduced to an admission that their fundamental assumptions about human capabilities had been catastrophically wrong. News of the victory spread across galactic networks faster than official channels could suppress it. The hegemony of worlds had been defeated in open combat by a human colony defended by refugee species that the Council had written off as unimportant. The political implications were staggering and could not be ignored even by the most prejudiced Council members. Emergency sessions were called as delegates demanded explanations for how primitive humans had defeated one of the galaxy's founding military powers. Threat assessments were hastily revised upward, while intelligence services scrambled to understand what they had missed during years of monitoring human activities. The victory at New Busan proved that humanity was capable of not just individual success, but of inspiring and coordinating other species in ways that the rigid Council hierarchy had never achieved. For the first time, galactic leaders began to Wonder if their initial judgment of human potential had been a mistake that might cost them everything. Governor Kang Bo-ra's broadcast to the galaxy following the battle included a simple message that would be remembered for generations. We did not seek this fight, but we will not back down from it. Earth stands with all free peoples who choose cooperation over conquest. The choice of how this ends belongs to the Council, not to us. The Galactic Council could no longer pretend that humanity was irrelevant to galactic affairs, but they were not yet ready to admit their mistakes or change their fundamental approach to dealing with what they still considered upstart primitives who had gotten lucky in one battle. 5 years had passed since the humiliation at the Galactic Council, and Commander Kim Min-seo stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride watching stars streak past the main viewing screen. This was not the same type of ship that had carried diplomats to beg for membership. This vessel was built for war, and it showed in every line of its sleek dark hull. The bridge buzzed with quiet activity as her crew prepared for their first real test. Officer stations glowed with holographic displays showing weapon systems that had not existed when humanity first reached the stars. The fusion engines hummed with a power that could push the ship faster than anything Earth had built before. But the real changes were not in the technology, they were in the people who used it. Min-seo had spent the last 3 years studying every piece of alien military doctrine she could find. The galactic powers fought like ancient knights, following honor codes and traditional formations that had not changed in centuries. They announced their attacks, gave quarter to defeated enemies, and followed rules that made warfare predictable and safe for everyone involved. Humans had learned to fight very differently during their long history on Earth. They used tricks and traps, changed tactics in the middle of battles, and treated warfare as a deadly game where the only rule was survival. These concepts were completely foreign to aliens who had grown comfortable with their superiority. Dr. Park Ji-won had transformed from a rejected diplomat into the leader of Earth's Xenotechnology division. Her teams worked in hidden facilities, scattered across the solar system, taking apart every piece of alien equipment they could buy, steal, or trade for. Each device was studied until its secrets were understood, then improved and integrated into human designs. The aliens had made their first critical mistake by underestimating human adaptability. While they laughed at Earth's primitive technology, they failed to notice how quickly humans learned. Every alien computer that entered human space was copied. Every weapon system was analyzed. Every ship design was studied and improved upon. Captain Yu Tae-jin commanded Earth's growing battle fleet from his flagship orbiting Mars. Unlike alien commanders who led from massive command ships surrounded by layers of protection, Yu stayed close to the fighting where he could make split-second decisions. His ships were smaller and faster than alien vessels designed for hit-and-run tactics that would have been considered cowardly by galactic standards. The first test came when the Draknari pirates decided to raid Earth's outer colonies. These were not members of the Galactic Council, but they shared the same attitude toward humans. The pirates expected easy victories against primitive human defenses and planned to capture slaves and technology for sale in alien markets. The Draknari arrived at Titan Station with 12 heavy cruisers and 30 fighter craft, expecting to find frightened colonists and a few patrol boats. Instead, they encountered Captain Yu's fleet waiting in perfect formation, as if they had known the attack was coming. The battle began according to Draknari traditions, with formal challenges and demands for surrender broadcast on all frequencies. While the alien commander was still speaking, Yu's ships opened fire from 3 different directions using weapons that the pirates had never seen before. Human plasma cannons had been built using stolen alien technology but improved with Earth engineering. The beams struck with precision that amazed even their targets, cutting through Draknari shields like they were made of paper. Missile salvos followed programmed flight paths that confused alien point defense systems by changing direction and speed in ways that seemed impossible. But the real shock came when the human ships began moving in coordination that required either psychic links or computer integration, far beyond what anyone thought Earth possessed. Lieutenant Commander Choi So-young led fighter squadrons that moved like flocks of birds, anticipating each other's movements and covering weaknesses before they could be exploited. The Draknari tried to respond with their traditional battle formations, but found themselves fighting an enemy that was everywhere at once. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids, struck with devastating effect, and vanished before return fire could be properly aimed. Their fighters swarmed over larger alien vessels like angry insects, finding weak spots that no one had ever thought to armor. The battle lasted only 40 minutes before the surviving Draknari ships fled in complete disorder. 3 of their heavy cruisers had been destroyed, and 8 more were heavily damaged. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel, though several showed battle damage from alien weapons. Captain Yu watched the enemy retreat on his main screen, knowing that this victory would be reported throughout the galactic underworld. Pirates would think twice before attacking human targets. Merchants would realize that Earth products were protected by competent military forces. Most importantly, the news would eventually reach the Galactic Council, whether they wanted to hear it or not. In the days that followed, human intelligence networks began picking up chatter from alien sources. Some dismissed the Draknari defeat as luck or exaggerated reports. Others wondered if humanity had somehow acquired advanced weapons from a secret ally. A few began asking uncomfortable questions about whether the Council's initial assessment of human capabilities had been completely wrong. The Draknari survivors told stories in spaceport bars about human ships that moved like ghosts and weapons that struck like lightning. They spoke of coordinated attacks that seemed impossible without psychic powers, and tactical decisions made faster than computer networks could process. Most listeners dismissed these tales as the excuses of defeated pirates, but some began to wonder. Dr. Park Ji-won received reports from human agents embedded in alien societies. Earth's spy network had grown enormously since the Council rejection, as humanity realized they needed intelligence more than diplomacy. These agents reported increased interest in human activities among certain alien military leaders who were beginning to ask their own scientists uncomfortable questions. The victory at Titan Station was just the beginning of humanity's rise, but it marked an important change in galactic perceptions. For the first time since reaching the stars, humans had proven themselves capable of military success against alien opponents. The species that had been laughed at was beginning to look dangerous. Commander Min Seo filed her after-action report, knowing that it would be studied by human military leaders planning the next phase of Earth's expansion into galactic affairs. The aliens had taught humanity that strength was the only language respected among the stars. Now it was time to become fluent in that language and show the galaxy what determined humans could accomplish when they stopped asking for permission and started taking action. The Galactic Council continued to ignore Earth's growing capabilities, but their dismissal was becoming harder to maintain as reports filtered in from across known space. Humanity was no longer just another primitive species begging for recognition. They were becoming a force that could not be overlooked much longer. The massive council chamber stretched out like a metal canyon, filled with the strangest beings Lee Sung-ho had ever seen in his 40 years of life. Giant lizard creatures with crystal skins sat next to floating jellyfish that glowed with rainbow colors. Insect beings the size of humans clicked their sharp claws on metal desks, while creatures made of pure light flickered in and out of view. The air smelled like a mix of ozone and something sweet that made his nose itch. Sung-ho stood alone at the center podium wearing his simple blue Earth uniform. The cloth felt rough against his skin as sweat began to form on his back. Around him rose thousands of seats filled with alien delegates representing species that had ruled the stars for millions of years. Their technologies could destroy planets or create new suns. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days. Their minds could speak to each other without words. And here he was representing Earth with nothing but hope and determination. The Vorthak delegation made the first sounds. These 7-foot-tall reptiles with scales that looked like broken mirrors hissed in what Sung-ho had learned was their version of laughter. The sound echoed through the chamber like steam escaping from a broken pipe. Other species joined in, with their own versions of amusement. The floating Nethrons pulsed with colors that his translator device said meant extreme ridicule. Sung-ho cleared his throat and began his prepared speech. His voice sounded small in the enormous space, but he forced himself to speak clearly and loudly. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, I come before you representing the planet Earth and all humanity. We seek membership in your great alliance of civilized worlds. We offer our friendship, our knowledge, and our commitment to peace among All species. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as cosmic laughter. The sound was so loud that Sung-ho had to cover his ears. Clicks, hisses, musical tones, and electronic buzzing filled the air for nearly 5 minutes before the speaker called for order. The speaker was a creature from the Mantari hive that looked like a giant praying mantis made of black metal. Its compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like 1,000 tiny mirrors as it spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. Human delegate, your species' presentation has been reviewed by our scientific committees. Your people fight constant wars among yourselves over resources, territory, and abstract concepts you call religion. Your technology barely allows you to leave your own solar system. You possess no psychic abilities, no energy manipulation powers, and no biological enhancement capabilities. Please explain what exactly your primitive species could contribute to our advanced civilization. Dr. Park Ji-won stepped forward from the human delegation. She was Earth's greatest scientist and had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Her hands shook slightly as she held up data tablets showing human achievements in medicine, engineering, art, and music. Respected council members, humanity has achieved great things in our short time as a spacefaring species. We have cured diseases that once killed millions. We have built structures that reach into the clouds. Our art and music express emotions that connect all living beings. We have learned to work together despite our differences. The ethereal conclave representative floated forward. This being looked like a cloud of golden light shaped roughly like a person. When it spoke, its voice sounded like a perfect choir singing in harmony. Young human, your species' accomplishments are admirable for such a primitive civilization. However, by galactic standards, you have barely progressed beyond what we consider the Stone Age of development. Your longest-lived members die after less than 100 years. Your fastest ships require months to cross a single star system. Your weapons are based on chemical explosions and metal projectiles. Perhaps in another 1,000 years you might be ready for consideration as a junior member species. The final insult came from General Vex-Tar of the Hegemony of Worlds. This being looked like a man-sized robot made from liquid metal with glowing red eyes that seemed to look right through a person. The Hegemony controlled the largest military force in the galaxy, and their opinion carried enormous weight in council decisions. Vex-Tar raised one metallic hand, and suddenly holographic displays filled the air above the chamber. The images showed Earth's military databases complete with details about every weapon system, ship, and defense installation humanity possessed. Sung-ho realized with horror that the aliens had been scanning their computers during the entire presentation. Council members, I have accessed this species' complete military records in the time it takes their primitive brains to form a single thought. Their most powerful weapons could not scratch the hull of our smallest patrol craft. Their largest warships are barely capable of reaching the edge of their own solar system without breaking down. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no quantum torpedoes, and no dimensional warfare capabilities. These humans are not warriors, they are children playing with toys made from scrap metal. The chamber filled with more alien laughter. Some species were actually rolling in their seats, or whatever they used for seating. Sung-ho felt his face burning with shame and anger, but he forced himself to remain standing straight. The formal vote was called, and every single species voted to reject Earth's application for membership. The numbers appeared on holographic displays around the chamber showing the count. 437 votes against membership, 0 votes in favor. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Sung-ho turned to face the assembled aliens one final time. His voice carried across the now quiet chamber with a strength that surprised even him. You may reject us today, and you may think we are too weak to matter in your great galactic civilization. But remember this moment, because I promise you something that will prove true. We humans may be young and our technology may seem primitive to you, but we survived everything our world threw at us. We turned frozen wastelands into gardens and split the smallest parts of matter to release the power of stars. We climbed out of caves and reached for the moon, and we did it all without giving up even when the task seemed impossible. He paused and looked directly at General Vex-Tar and the other military leaders. Most importantly, we never learned how to surrender. Your species have had millions of years to grow comfortable and safe. You have forgotten what it means to struggle for survival. One day you will face a threat that your advanced weapons and ancient wisdom cannot handle. On that day you will need us more than we need you, and you will remember the species you laughed at today." The chamber fell completely silent as Sung Ho and his delegation walked toward the exit. Behind them, alien delegates began placing bets on how long it would take for humanity to destroy itself or fade into cosmic irrelevance. None of them noticed the quiet determination in the humans' eyes, or understood that being underestimated was about to become their greatest advantage in the challenges ahead.